The red envelope sat untouched in the center of the table. My father had laughed when I handed it to him earlier that evening. My mother smiled politely. My sister, Renee, barely looked up from her phone before saying, "What is it this year? Another thoughtful little budget gift?" Everyone laughed. Not cruelly at first, just enough to remind me where I stood in the family hierarchy. I smiled anyway. I had spent years mastering that smile. The calm one, the quiet one, the expression that hid exhaustion behind grace. Dinner continued around me like I was background noise. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive wine flowed freely. Renee talked about a luxury trip she couldn't afford. My parents praised her the way they always did, like she hung the moon itself. Meanwhile, I sat there invisible, again. What none of them knew was simple. The electricity in that condo, me, the rent, me, the groceries delivered every Friday, also me. For nearly 5 years, I had quietly supported the life they proudly believed they built themselves. And Renee? She accepted the credit every single time. I never corrected them. At first, I stayed silent because I didn't want conflict. Then silence became habit. Eventually, it became survival. But that night, something inside me finally shifted. Maybe it was the way my father joked about how some children bloom while others just linger. Maybe it was my mother nodding along. Or maybe it was hearing Renee say, "Honestly, Ava just isn't ambitious like the rest of us." As if sacrifice wasn't ambition, as if survival wasn't work. As if love didn't count unless it came wrapped in applause. So when dinner ended, I stood calmly, picked up my purse, and looked at the envelope one last time. "Open it later," I said softly. Then I left. No drama, no yelling, no tears, just peace. By midnight, my phone exploded with calls. At first, I ignored them. Then, curiosity won. I listened to the voicemail from my father first. "Ava, what is this?" His voice sounded unfamiliar, smaller somehow. The envelope contained every bank transfer, rent payment, utility bill, grocery receipt, and emergency deposit I had made over the years, highlighted, dated, organized. At the bottom was a short note. "Effective immediately, all financial support has ended. Sincerely, the daughter you called useless." Silence followed that message for nearly 12 hours. Then panic arrived. "Ava, please call us." "You misunderstood. It was just a joke. You know your father doesn't mean those things. You can't just walk away from family." That last sentence almost made me laugh, because suddenly I realized something important. To them, I was never truly family. I was infrastructure, useful when needed, ignored when not, and now the structure had disappeared. By the next morning, reality started settling into their lives. The luxury condo they proudly showed off, behind on rent, the premium utilities, disconnected, the grocery subscriptions, canceled. My father apparently tried arguing with the building manager downstairs, but confidence doesn't pay overdue balances. Renee arrived shortly after, still dressed perfectly, still pretending control. "What do you mean Ava paid for everything?" she demanded. My mother sat frozen at the kitchen table, transaction papers shaking in her hands. My father looked furious. Not at me, at the truth. $48,000, he snapped. "That's how much your sister gave this family." Renee blinked hard. "I mean, I never said I paid for all of it. But you let us believe you did," my mother whispered. And just like that, the illusion cracked. Renee's polished image unraveled quickly after that. Maxed out credit cards, missed payments, no savings, no safety net. Just filters, borrowed status, and carefully staged photos online. For years, they praised the wrong daughter while quietly depending on the one they dismissed. And now, they had to face it. Meanwhile, I sat alone on my apartment balcony with a cup of coffee and watched the city lights glow beneath the evening sky. For the first time in years, I felt calm, not victorious, free. I blocked Renee after her 5th voicemail. "Ava, you're overreacting." If you cared so much, you should have said something. You can't disappear like this. But I could, and I did. The eviction happened 3 weeks later. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet consequences. My parents moved into Renee's apartment temporarily, but that arrangement collapsed fast. Renee's lifestyle looked glamorous online, but behind the scenes, everything was unstable. Eventually, my parents rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment far outside the city. No concierge, no skyline views, no designer kitchen, just reality. I heard my father started stocking shelves at a neighborhood market. My mother took shifts at a flower shop nearby. At first, I imagined I'd feel satisfaction hearing that. But honestly, I mostly felt sadness. Not because they suffered, because it took losing everything for them to finally see me clearly. Still, I didn't return. Healing required distance. And for the first time in my adult life, I started building something for myself instead of rescuing everyone else. I relaunched my consulting business full-time. Without constant financial pressure draining me, I finally had energy to grow it properly. Clients multiplied quickly. Within months, I doubled my income, then tripled it. I moved into a beautiful downtown apartment filled with things I actually loved. Warm lighting, bookshelves, quiet mornings, soft music drifting through open windows. No guilt, no emergency calls, no emotional debt, just peace. One afternoon, I gave a keynote speech at a women's finance conference. The topic was simple: how to build while being overlooked. I spoke honestly about invisible labor, about daughters raised to give endlessly while receiving little in return, about how generosity without boundaries eventually becomes self-erasure. The room went silent when I said, "Some people don't love you. They love access to you." Afterward, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "My family makes me feel guilty for succeeding," she whispered. "Hearing your story made me feel less alone." I hugged her tightly because I understood exactly what she meant. Pain becomes lighter when someone finally names it. That night, my son called from college. "Mom," he said gently, "people finally see what I've always seen." "What's that?" I asked. "That you're not weak," he replied. "You just loved people who didn't know how to value quiet strength." I sat with those words long after the call ended. Because he was right. I had mistaken endurance for obligation. I had spent years proving my worth to people committed to misunderstanding me. And once I stopped trying, everything changed. A month later, I received a handwritten letter from my father. No demands, no anger, just this: "We were wrong. If you ever choose to visit, we would be grateful. Not as our provider, as our daughter." I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not because everything was healed, but because I no longer needed revenge to feel whole. Time passed quietly after that. My business expanded. I hired employees. I traveled for the first time without guilt attached to every purchase. And slowly, I became someone new. Not the exhausted daughter scrambling to keep everyone afloat. Not the invisible provider behind the scenes. Just Ava. One cold morning, I accidentally passed my parents' apartment building on the way to a meeting. Across the street, I saw them through the glass entrance doors. My father carried grocery bags slowly now. My mother adjusted flowers behind the lobby counter where she worked mornings. They looked older, smaller somehow, human. And standing there watching them, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not triumph, not resentment, just acceptance. Consequences had already done their work. I didn't need to punish anyone anymore. Life had handled that part quietly on its own. A week later, another package arrived at my office. Inside was the same red envelope I had handed my father at dinner months earlier. Folded neatly, untouched. But this time, there was a note tucked inside. 4 simple words written in my father's handwriting. "We finally understand now." I held that note for a long time, then placed it beside the others in my drawer and closed it gently. Because this story was never really about money, or revenge, or proving anyone wrong. It was about value. about the moment a woman finally realizes her worth does not shrink simply because others fail to recognize it. For years, my family thought they were saving me, but the truth was far simpler. I had been holding all of us together, and the moment I stopped carrying their weight, I finally learned how light freedom could feel.